We're going to switch gears right now and go over and say hello again to Theresa. And Theresa got the financial tips for this Wednesday.
Yes, I do.
And what we're going to talk about today?
We're going to continue talking about student loans, but specifically I'm going to talk about today is the Stafford loan.
Okay. All right.
So, hi, this is Theresa. I'm with Being Broke Isn't Cute. You can reach me at beingbrokeisntcute.com, or you can like me on Facebook at Being Broke Isn't Cute PFS. Okay, last week, if you were listening, I talked in general about the difference between federal student loans and private student loans. This week, I'm going a little bit more in detail about federal student loans, specifically the Stafford loan. Now, the Stafford loan is a federal student loan that can be either subsidized, which means the government pays the interest, or it can be unsubsidized, meaning that you pay the interest yourself, although most students don't start paying the interest until after graduation. Now, to get these loans, and pretty much any federal student loan, you're going to have to start with the free application for federal student aid, also sometimes called the FAFSA, and you will have to, for a subsidized loan, you have to demonstrate a financial need. So to get a subsidized loan where the government pays your interest, you have to show that you have a financial need for that. Now, for an unsubsidized loan, you don't have to show any kind of financial need. Those are pretty much open for anybody. And if you're a graduate or a professional student, unsubsidized loans are the only ones that are available to you. You can't get a subsidized loan if you're going to be, if you're a graduate or a professional student. Now, the big difference is, the great thing about federal loans is that they have such low interest rates. Because they're backed by the U.S. government. So they're basically backed by the U.S. Department of Education. They're the ones actually giving you the loan. So you still have to be careful, because again, it's the government. And if you don't pay these back, like I said last week, if you do not pay the government back, the government has abilities that regular creditors do not. They can garnish your paycheck, and they can also take your tax refund and or your Social Security check. So these are not something that you want to just play around with. Don't take any loan for granted. Anytime you go into debt with anybody, you sign a contract. That is a legal document, and they can enforce it to their decision. If they decide not to enforce it, that's up to them, but they can enforce it. Anyway, as back to the Stafford loans. There are some limits on the Stafford loan as far as how much you can actually borrow. There's a whole schedule depending on whether you're an independent student, meaning you're trying to get the loan on your own, or you're a dependent student, meaning you're trying to get through your parents. There's a whole basically table of different situations, whether or not you're in your freshman year, sophomore year, what your college, what type of college you're going to. So if you go to, I will post the information, the more detailed information as far as the tables and things like that, links and things like that, on my website, beingbrokeisntcute.com, so that you can look at that. That's really a little bit too complicated to try to go into and explain to somebody while they're driving down the highway.
I understand.
But I did want to bring out, if you're in the military, if you're in the military, or if you're going into the teaching profession, or any kind of public sector position, make a couple of calls, because I know with the military, their interest rate is capped at 6%. Right now, interest rate on Stafford loans are going between 3 and 4%, which is a low interest rate. You cannot get, you pretty much cannot get a private loan, especially for school, for that kind of rate. So what do you have to do? What makes you eligible for a Stafford loan? Well, first you have to either be a U.S. citizen, or you have to be an eligible non-citizen. I'm not quite sure what an eligible non-citizen is, but believe me, I bet the government has it properly defined. So you will know if you are or you are not. The next thing, you have to be enrolled or accepted for enrollment for at least a half-time basis in an eligible participating institution, which means your school has to be approved by the federal government. It has to be working in their program. Another thing I want, while we're talking about schools, is that when you're looking at it, okay, now I'm hearing myself echo, but that's okay. That's okay. The amount that you can borrow is actually determined by the school you attend. So what you'll do is you'll complete your FAFSA. When you complete the FAFSA, because I have 2 boys who went through college, you tell them the schools that you want to go to, and you can tell them up to, several schools, I know at least up to 10, and they will send your FAFSA to all of those schools. And then the schools will look at what they have and what they have available, and then they will say, hey, we can give you this much money, this much will be subsidized, this much will be unsubsidized. If it's unsubsidized, you're going to be paying interest. The good thing is that you don't have to necessarily pay the interest while you're in school.
Okay.
But that interest accrues, it still accrues from the time you borrow the money. So if you borrow $10,000, by the time you finish school, that could be up to $1,100, or depending on the interest. Depending on if you started in your freshman year, because some people start taking out loans in their freshman year, so that rolls over for 4 years, and they're not paying interest on those loans for 4 long years, and even at 3 or 4%, that can add up. And you don't want, what I wouldn't want a student to do is get to the end of their school term and graduate, and then look at that statement that they have coming from the government saying, you owe this much money, and you're sitting there at sticker shock, and you don't know how you're going to pay this money back. So when you're taking out these loans, they're going to send you the paperwork as saying how much you owe and all that kind of stuff. But be proactive and keep up with that yourself. And you see those student loans get a little high, you might have to make some alternate changes. You might have to get a job. You may want to start paying the interest. A lot of times you don't have to wait till you graduate to pay the interest. You can pay the interest the whole time, and that's usually the smallest piece.
Right.
So if you can keep up with the interest, so by the time you get out of college, you'll just have the principal that you owe from the actual loans. So that's pretty much all I got.
Okay, but that's interesting. That's interesting the way the government operates and do these loans, and it is much cheaper for you to get a government loan than it is to just go and borrow the money.
Well, another good thing that I forgot to point out is that they don't do any kind of credit check or anything like that. The eligibility requirements that I pointed out, you have to be a U.S. citizen, basically. You have to roll or be accepted into college. And if you're a male, you have to be registered for U.S. Selective Service.
Yes.
That's the only thing. They're going to ask you that on the application. They're going to ask you that on the application. If you say no, that's as good as you saying you don't want a loan. You don't want to. That's the first thing they're going to think. It might pop up. Why not?
Right. That's kind of holding your feet to the fire.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't sign up for the military, then you don't get the loan.
Wow. Probably not. I haven't seen anybody get one who didn't.
Okay. Once again, Being Broke Isn't Cute, and tell us once again the website.
It's beingbrokeisn'tcute.com, or like me on Facebook, y'all, at Being Broke Isn't Cute PFS. You can always reach me through the station too.
All right, you hear it, and you heard it first here on Jazzy Stuff. Miss Theresa, financial tips for this Wednesday. Jazzy Stuff. I like that.